Okay, so this begins a little mini series of videos I'm going to do about Dodge pickups from the 70s and what the differences are. I decided to do this video simply because suddenly I had a whole variety of them on the yard within the last month. And some are still here: 72, 73, 74, 76, 77, 78, and an 80. That covers quite a bit of the variety. In addition to the variety that I currently have, I've got all kinds of stuff, parts over the years I've gathered up. Some I still have, some I've sold. So I think I've developed a fairly good knowledge base, and I want to pass that on. This is going to be the same intro for all the videos. So if you're watching this and it's not the first one, then go back and check out my channel or the playlist that I hopefully will set up, and then you can watch all of them. I'm going to try to keep them in that 10 to 15 minute range, so I really don't know how many I'm going to have. I might have 2, I might have 15. Well, I won't have 15. I might have like 4, something like that. It kind of depends. So, but I'm going to do it in a logical manner as best I can. So the logical progression and the way these videos are going to work, the way I'm going to put them up, is how you would encounter a vehicle, whether it's online or whether you see one sitting on the side of the road for sale. Exterior first, what are the differences? Then you would probably get inside, check out the cab, then that's going to be the next thing, the interior. Then underneath the hood, the various differences under the hood. And then the last part would be mechanical and miscellaneous oddball things. Not so much mechanical, because most of the mechanical changes are going to be purely option driven, and I'm not going to get deep into options and packages and stuff like that. I'll mention some of the things, but I'm not going to get into this year had this option, this one had this, because that changed way too much. And with pickups, it was, and actually anything in the 70s really, the whole deal was if you could pay for it, the factory would make it for you. And I have seen some really weird stuff that was not, quote, available, but yet somehow was available. So I'm not, like I say, I'm just not going to get into that part of it. So here's something that I think really needs to be mentioned the way I'm doing this video. You're not going to see pristine vehicles. You're not going to see the show trucks. I'm dealing with just old, sometimes quite beat up trucks, original stuff that I don't believe has been changed or modified. In some cases, maybe never even worked on a day in its life in the last 40, almost 50 years on some of these things. The reason for that is simple. I want to know the way it was when it left the factory, and that's what I'm trying to show to you, is the way it left. Now, a nice show truck, it could be 100% perfect as factory, but I don't know that because so many of these parts are so similar, you won't notice. And I'll show you, especially when I start talking about the pickup boxes. There are a lot of differences in the boxes over the years, way more than I ever realized until, again, like I say, I started looking at them and realizing that, oh, this is different, that's different, and then really started looking at all the differences that there are. So you can see a bunch of beat up rusty things. You can see stuff like this: busted windshield, rust on it, whatever, trashy or rat infested interiors. But so long as the pieces are original, that's what I'm going for. That's what you're going to see. So please keep that in mind. Don't diss the trucks. They are what they are. All right, so in this episode, I think we're nearing the end of all of these. I had something else planned, but then I realized that I totally forgot about one whole file folder in my computer that had some stuff in. So it's going to be kind of things that aren't really very connected, but don't really fit into other categories very well. So we're going to talk about a couple things. I don't think I've mentioned rear bumpers yet. We're going to talk about that. The exciting world of radio antennas, and then fuel tanks, and maybe something else, kind of depending on how long those get, but that'll be the next chunk. And then after that, we're talking about mechanical, and then it should be one more after that, and we're done. Yeah, so I will get this I'll get this done, and you should hopefully see it soon. Cool. Thanks. Okay, let's talk rear bumper for all of 12 seconds. This style, they're pretty much all the same, 72 through, I don't know, sometime in the 80s. If the step bumpers, a lot of those were dealer installed, but this factory installed bumper, no change throughout the years, all the same. Spoiler alert, you may not be able to see what I'm showing you because we're talking about antennas. But I'm gonna yak about it while I point to stuff. Anyway, so there's 3 antennas you're gonna find on these trucks. Maybe there's more, but I know of 3 for sure. Anyway, you have the hard to find or hard to recognize unless you really know what you're looking for, AM FM CB, the tri-band antenna. You've got your AM FM antenna, and you've got an AM antenna mast. So start with the easy difference first. The tri-band antenna, and here, well, so I've got, these are taped together for another reason, but tri-band antenna, you've got a little bigger base on the bottom, and you've got obviously got 2 sets of wires coming out. One of them broke. That was me being stupid, but so there's this extra piece here, and then you've got the regular AM FM base or AM base. So they're almost at the same height, and you come up over here, you look, and there's a good, you know, 6 inches, and once you factor in that other inch back there, you know, you've got a good 7 inches difference in height. And the reason is, well, let me give you a quick little science lesson on antennas. There's AM, FM, and CB. Most people know CB stands for Citizens Band. It's just a different set of frequencies. AM is amplitude modulation. FM is frequency modulation. And the way they travel through the air and the way the antennas pick stuff up is different between the two of them, because your AM is your amplitude, FM is frequency. So different frequencies moving through the air are different wavelengths. So your AM, or your FM and your CB, because that's multiple frequencies, the different diameter of the antenna mast will pick up a slightly different frequency better. They all kind of pick up the same thing, but the different diameter picks up a different frequency better. That's why I say if you look at an old TV antenna, and I'll even show you mine on the roof, up there, if I could zoom in, but you know what a TV antenna looks like. You've got all these different lengths of rods sticking out. Each one will pick up a different frequency better. That's why your FM mast gets really skinny at the top as compared to the base, which is quite a bit wider. And you've all seen antennas, you probably know what I'm talking about. So and then you've got an AM antenna, which is what I have on this thing right now, and I know it's tough to see, but the base and the top are the same size basically. And I'll show you, you know, because the ball is the same size, and you can really see the difference in the actual, if I can hold them in the right spot, the difference in the shaft size. That's because this truck was born AM only, and I put an AM FM in it, and that radio died, but that's a whole nother issue. So this antenna mast itself is one solid thing, and that's why it is AM only. Now, you can put, I had an AM FM hooked to this antenna. It works. I think 99% of my problems are the actual radio itself, because it just up and quit one day after sputtering, and anyway. So those are your 3 antenna choices. So if you have an AM only mast, which a lot of them were, because a lot of dealerships would order an AM radio, so they had it all in there, then they would upsell essentially at the dealership. They'd option you up, they just slap a different radio in there and leave the old mast because it still worked. But if you put an AM FM mast on it, you know, like this guy, you know, same height, you know, essentially, actually it might even be just a smidge bit shorter, but
And I don't know where this one came out. This one might have come off of a car too, as far as I know, because I've just got a stack of them things. You'll probably get a little clearer, maybe a little less static, whatever. And since AM is still amplitude modulation, you know, it has a lot of this already built in it, the AM FM, that sizing, and it works fine. So weird little quirks that I've found over the years. Antenna mast, I don't know if there's any year difference between this and that, other than I'm sure by the late 70s, AM only radios, or at least the radio masts, were probably on their way out, because it was just as easy to make, you know, the AM FM mast as it was the AM, and there's one less part they got to keep track of going down the assembly line. Simple. Yeah, more trivia than anything, but still good to know.
So it's commonly held knowledge, including myself until very, 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 very recently, that 72s didn't have plastic tanks in. That's not true. Very, very few of them did, I think. And it wasn't the main tank. So this is a 72, and it's got dual tanks. However, and I've talked to 2 other people that have this exact same setup, it has this screwball, and it's all factory, 1 inlet, 2 tanks thing. You can kind of see. I'll show you the outside in a little bit here. So it's 2 pipes. It's like an exhaust Y pipe, basically. So you've got one place to fill from. I don't know if you can see in there or not very well, but if you go basically straight, it'll go into the cab tank, and then you can kind of see the downspout part, and that'll take you to the under the box tank, even though it has no box. So, and this basically, the coming down through here and then out the back of the cab is the same setup they used in 73 for the club cabs, because the club cabs didn't have the cab tank, but the boxes didn't have the provision for an under the box tank yet. So anyway, so you fill the bottom tank, you have to angle your filler in. It goes down here, goes out the back of the cab, through here, and then back down under here. And here's the original tank, the original plastic tank. And this one is all beat to hell. It's too bad, because otherwise I thought I could maybe sell it. But the bad thing with these is, and a friend of mine confirmed it, because when he redid his truck, he changed it, is this tank basically fills from the bottom. So if it's empty, he said it can take forever to fill, because you're, like I say, you're not dumping gas in, you're pushing gas up into the tank. Even with the vent going, it still takes a long, long time. And which is, I'm sure, why they changed it for 74. Then in 74, when they actually go through the box, you know, it loads up, fills up somewhere in the top. And again, another odd thing, there's your sending unit, you know, for your gauge level and stuff, and there's your pickup unit. So it's a bizarre tank. And like I say, there's not too many of them around. 72 obviously, and 73, but just 73 club cabs, and I suppose like the camper specials, that kind of thing too, but generally speaking, not the normal pickups. So just a little start on the weird fuel tank setup. And something else I noticed with this one is this cab tank was painted black. I have no reason to believe that this has ever been out, so that's probably done from the factory. All of the rest of them I've ever seen have just been like a galvanized finish, so that must have been something they realized they didn't need to spend the money on gas, or they just decided, you know, no one's gonna see it anyway, who cares, make it galvanized, put a seat in front of it, and boom, done. And then the other thing I'll show you, so you have a bunch of vent lines, and they actually go up into here a ways. Sometimes it feels like they go way the hell up there, but that's the bad thing, you know, they kind of have a vent line that goes up into there, and sometimes like that hose will leak. So that's the bad thing about the cab tank. I've got a couple with cab tanks in. You can always kind of smell a little bit of that gas smell because of the vent. And I think the one of them actually has a line that just goes up there. It's a one-way little valve in there. It's a breather, so it'll let air in, but not out. But it still lets a little bit out anyway. So, but that's just the way life is with a cab tank. Now this is a club cab, but the fuel filler was still in the cab. The tank is not in the cab. The tank is underneath, but the filler is there. And again, it's you know, recessed in really nice. But the fuel filler went through the cab, or down inside the cab, then out through the back of the cab, and then into the tank. But I will crawl under here and see if I can show you what's going on. Yep, there we go. There it's coming out of the cab, and it's still all factory. And then it loops around and goes into there, into the tank. So 1973, once again, another weird tank. So this is a very unusual filler spot. I guess it made sense that it was on the same level as the cab tank, but still bizarre. So you'll see it actually comes through both pieces of the box side, and then goes down through the floor, and it even has the vent tube. So, and kind of looking at how hacked it is, I'm gonna guess this was probably a dealer installed thing, or maybe it was factory. It's hard to say, but that, for what you can see, is a factory tank, 74 style, and as it goes, it enters into the way back of the tank, not like the top, somewhere in the middle. And it's a really big tank. A weird looking fuel filler, you know, tube on it and everything. So what I've learned, or what I'm coming to learn with fuel tanks, especially 72, 73, it's whatever the heck they had that they could make fit. Starting in 74, they were a little more consistent, like they're all about the same. Every time I get a 72 or 3, it's got a different fuel tank setup, and they all look factory or very close to factory, like dealer installed. So this one I think was a camper special, probably why I had the second. As a quick example, here's 74 club cab. Nope, not there. It's in the box where it should be, and then it's pretty standard issue, goes over the frame rail, then into the tank. Okay, so quick discussion about the 74 fuel tank, a unique thing. Prior to that, you know, I showed you the 72 and 3 with the plastic tank entered in from the bottom. Pain in the ass to fill, from what I've been told. So they kind of fixed it in 74. So this is the way it would have kind of been situated, roughly, with the box on. And then it filled from the back of the tank. So you had this weird, you know, extra hose in there. Much better than it was, but then in 75 they changed it, so then it just entered in the top of the tank over here, and then that's basically the way it was, you know, even through the 80s, to the end of the 80s and beyond. There was a few differences in fuel tanks from 75 and newer, but for the most part very minor little things that completely interchangeable from one year to the next, so long as there was room. Sometimes I've seen it with a longer fuel tank, like the big 30-some gallon tank, doesn't always fit the short box, especially the short box 4-wheel drives. But sometimes it does, because sometimes they had little bump outs in them, sometimes they didn't. You know, it's a little confusing, but at the same time it's not, because they are, generally speaking, completely, totally interchangeable, with the exception, and even this one too, you can put this 74 tank in anything newer, so long as you have all the pieces to go with it. And you've got, you know, the fill tubes, the hoses, etc. Or you can put a newer one in here. You can probably put a newer one in the older ones too, so long as you've got a place for the gas, for the filler tube to attach inside the box. So in case I haven't mentioned it already, a couple 10 times, 72, 73, everything had a cab tank in, unless it was something different like a club cab or whatever. But even if it didn't have, they still ran the fuel line through the cab, because the tank was already there, and then it came out the firewall right here, you know, and then it routed over to wherever. And in 74 they still did that, even if the tank was underneath, because they still had all the plumbing and everything set up
And I guess from a manufacturing standpoint, it was simple because the cab was put together already with all that stuff. Anyway, I'm glad they changed it, because here's a good example of why that was a bad idea, because they ran the fuel line right along here, and you can see that not exactly in the best shape. It's just completely rotted out. And this is a club cab, and you can kind of see where it went back over here. In addition, a screw for the interior trim went right through the rubber line. I'm going to hope and assume that was not from the factory, because that would have been bad news right off the bat. So I'm glad they changed it. I don't know exactly why they changed it, but I know 74 is the last year I've ever seen them in. All 75s in are routed along the frame rail like a good pickup should have. But I will show you back here a little bit. So it came, yeah, it just a weird setup. That's all there is to it. You know, and this was a club cab with plastic tank, which unfortunately is damaged, which is too bad, because 74's got a unique tank. But yeah, just you know, and normally it would have come afterwards, came along, did this number, and then on the inside of the frame rail it went all the way up to the front by the fuel pump. Here's a 78 with a factory cab mounted tank, and see there's no recess around it to set everything in a little bit like that 72 had.